Hi, everyone. I'm Andrius Ropolas, an architect from Office de Architectura, a studio office based in Lithuania. I will talk a little bit about our projects during the presentation, so I will not expand too much on our work. If you will be interested, I will give you a link at the end, and you will be able to visit and see more of our work. And a little bit about me. I'm an architect, and I was working and studying in different countries like Japan, Denmark, UK, Belgium. I think that's all. And a couple of years ago, I came back to Lithuania, and me with a couple of colleagues, we established our own practice. So without further ado, let's start the presentation.
The following advertisement is intended for Jim Boonie only.
It's free. Real estate.
We're giving you land.
It's free.
We're giving you a house.
It's real estate. Free.
It's a free house for you, Jim.
This is free real estate.
Well, you got to bring furniture, but the house is free.
2 bedrooms, no rugs. It's free.
You unlock the door to your free house. We got you the real estate.
It's a 2-bedroom house. It's free. It's got a pool in the
I'm
back.
not carrying this around all day. It's for your house.
Free real estate. I'll pee my pants.
Jim, come get your damn land.
It's a free house.
Jim, I got real estate.
Jim, to get better than this.
Jim.
The house is free.
Jim.
The house is free.
It's a free house.
Okay, that was stupid. You know what else is stupid? That it's kind of true. Everything they said in this comedy sketch is true. If you don't know them, it's Tim and Eric, and their show is called Awesome Show, Tim and Eric Awesome Show. So they are comedians who do very ridiculous, absurd, and silly humor. And so if they did this, talking about free house, it means that it's quite strange idea and probably it's a nonsense. However, we see that this is how it is in Japan. These are a couple of headlines talking about free houses in Japan. And now I will show you another clip.
If somebody wants to come live here, they potentially could get this house for free.
He says, yes, if you live in the house for 15 years, we will give it to you for free.
So, two very different formats. One is a comedy sketch, another one is CBS News, but the content is exactly the same. Free house for whoever wants it. Why? Why Japan is giving houses? Why Japan is doing what the US thinks is nonsense? Okay, bear with me. I know I'm showing some charts, but there will be maybe 4 of them total in the presentation, so it's fine. Maybe you can survive this. So this chart is important because it shows the world population. And world population, as we know, it's a common knowledge, is increasing. It's going up, it's rising, and this is what we see in the chart. So there's nothing new here. Everybody knows that. And then in next 50 years, world population will increase by 34%. So all great, all good, everything's fine. At the end of the century, we see it's going to be a little more stable and going to be more equal, but it's still rising. However, Japan, very different. We see that around year 2010, 2005, population started to decline. And in next 50 years, population will decline by 28%, which is a lot. And this might explain why Japan is now starting to give houses for free, because population is declining. There's less people, houses are already built. What do we do? But, well, it's Japan. Well, not exactly it's Japan. It's also in Lithuania, my home country. So in next 50 years, population will decline by 1/3. And as we see it, we are ahead of Japan, a phrase which I cannot use very often. We are ahead because we started to decline in 1990s, 20 years ahead. Ukraine, very similar curve. 1990s, going down minus 32% in the next 50 years. So we see that the population is increasing in the world. However, it is declining in some countries. Okay, you might say, okay, this is just maybe a local, more local phenomena. However, if we look at the world, it's a global phenomenon, really. This is Atlas of Shrinking Cities map from Atlas of Shrinking Cities, a book which was released some time ago already, but it's still relevant because it just indicates the situation which is happening everywhere. So even though population is increasing in the world, we see that there are places which it is decreasing. So in some cases, like all Eastern Europe, population is rapidly decreasing. Japan is rapidly decreasing. Then we have places in the US, of course, like Detroit, we know more spots like cities which are decreasing. So we cannot really say that population is increasing and everything is kind of the same. It's not. And to finish this statistical part of the talk, I just want to share the quote from An Aging World 5 years ago, a report done by US Census Bureau, which says that for the first time in human history, people aged 65 and over will outnumber children under age of 5. So, and this crossing is just around the corner before 2020. So this report is 5 years old and it means we're already here. So it means that in the world we have more people aged 65 and over than we have children under age of 5. And this trend will continue, that these two lines will disperse, and that by 2050, we will have the population aged 65 and older will be more than double that of children. So this means many new things for both architecture, economy, and everything, because we see that there will be more and more elderly, which means there will be more attention to them. I know that politicians like to say that, oh, children are our future and blah, 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 things like this. However, I think we will soon be seeing a trend where we'll see that elderly are our future because there's more voters simply in that category. And the gray economy, the products and everything will more focusing on the elderly. Well, it's not really a rocket science, it's just numbers, and that's basic logic. And what does it mean for architecture? Because now I was talking about statistic data and showing you some silly videos. Okay, let me show you some pictures of buildings. So this is Okutama, Japan. That's from the place from that report where you could get a house for free. It's not technically for free. You get it for free if you stay there for 15 years and if you pay property tax, which is around 240 euros per year. So for this particular house, almost 120 square meters, 2-story wooden frame, 4 bedrooms, total price during 15 years of your residence there would be 30 euros per square meter, which I think is a great price anywhere in the world, no matter where we check. I think that's really competitive price. Okay, let's look at Lithuania. What's happening? 2-room apartment in a place where probably you don't want to live, but same is for Japan. And here we have 1 square meter for 20 euros. Even cheaper. Of course, you don't have your own land, it's apartment, so well, 10 euro discount.
And this is what happens when you have these situations. The politicians try to pour money into these locations. They add money more and more and more because this is how they used to do it. And when eventually pouring money doesn't work, you have to demolish it. And you have to just acknowledge that it didn't work.
But this is how basically it has been for millennia, centuries and millennia, and probably, again, this word for like all human history. We were constructing and then demolishing, constructing and then demolishing. And every city, well, every historical city is built like this. So it was constructed, then something had to be demolished, then it's constructed again. So we have the cycle, and then when you encounter a shrinking population issue, maybe not an issue, let's say a challenge, a more pleasant word. If you try to use this logic, it doesn't really work because we have never really experienced global shrinking, or, I mean, we are not experiencing by numbers global shrinking, but we are experiencing shrinking globally everywhere now. Well, maybe except Africa. So if you apply this logic, it doesn't really work that well, because if you demolish, what do you construct? Because there's no need for construction anymore. And demolishing just for demolition is not really good. I mean, in political terms, I mean, I don't have to tell you what would be the career of the politician who would say, my goal and my aim is to demolish empty villages, close down schools, and remove villages from countryside, from the map completely. I mean, even I know that this might be a good thing to do in some cases. Probably even I wouldn't vote for that kind of person. So that's the problem. That's the challenge of constructing, demolishing, and then doing maybe the right thing, which you should do in the times when you don't need to construct anything anymore. But I think we all architects feel that there's urgent or some kind of urgency for something new, because doing the things old way doesn't work that well. So we start to invent something new, like new branding, like smart cities. So, okay, if we build smart cities, maybe we can argue that it's worth building it, or we have to do something, build carbon neutral, or we have to build something sustainable, resilient, and so on. And then, but in the end, these words are still about building, and it doesn't. It's just branding, and it's building new things. And it's really doing the same thing which was happening all the time. And I think in the age now, what we're experiencing, that the first time in human history, as the report said, we are seeing some shifts in the population, in demographics. In some cases, for the first time, population is really declining rapidly, and it will stay like this because there are objective reasons, and we can go to another lecture about that, why it's probably gonna stay like this, because simply education and healthcare towards, and this will keep the numbers where they will be soon, or in some regions where they are. And fertility rates are declining, and so on, and so on, and so on. And then architects are trying to find new ways, carbon neutral, resilient, sustainable. Remco has talked about countryside. But I think what we really should explore, what kind of field we should explore, is architecture, doing architecture by not building anything. I know it sounds scary, but I think that's the new reality we are facing. And it's not that I just came up with this and from nowhere, this is already happening. So these are these are 3 or 5 finalists of Mies van der Rohe Awards from last year. If somebody doesn't know, it's the most prestigious award in architecture given in Europe every 2 years. And these 3 finalists are dealing with something new, or I mean something new which we haven't seen in these type of awards previously, because usually buildings like 10 years ago, opera houses, concert halls, and buildings like that. Big, cultural, shiny, and very expensive buildings were being awarded and going to the finals. And now we see that the two buildings on their sites are reconstruction or renovation buildings projects. The one on the right, the one in Bordeaux, has won the project as the best building in Europe, the best project in Europe. And it's a renovation of old apartment house. It's not even new, it's just a renovation of old apartment house. So this is the best project in Europe. And the one project in the middle, if those two are dealing with reconstruction or renovation, the one in the middle, even though it's a new plaza in Albania, in Tirana, in my eyes, it's dealing with, or not dealing, but doing in a conceptual way, a removal. So even not really a demolition, but in a way of cleaning, removal action. Because if you would really look at the project, how it was before, it was very crowded, heavily crowded in terms of meanings, signs, also traffic, and all mental and physical crowdedness. And what was done, everything was removed. So we're dealing with projects which might be expensive. However, they, in their ideas, are really showing a little bit change maybe in how architecture could be done, and that they are recognized as three of or five best buildings in Europe. It shows that this is already coming, this recognition and this understanding. And I want to show you a couple of projects. Some of them are either done by me or together with colleagues in our office. And maybe the first one will be just more theoretical research on how we can work in a shrinking environment. So for everybody who's watching this, I don't know who are watching it now, but if you are joining it from Lithuania or Ukraine, you definitely know what I'm showing you. It's just a typical socialist neighborhood, which we all know. And even if you are joining it, I guess from France, you also know it pretty well, but you call it maybe a little bit different name, and it's same everywhere in the world. Just what we have in a post-Soviet geography is that we have probably worse quality than compared to those, for example, in France. So this is a research about the area in the middle, in the center. It's a typical socialist neighborhood where the typical problems, kiosks, children playgrounds converted to car parkings and so on. And if we look, what do we have there exactly? What are the data shows us about this location is that we see that in next 10 years, we might expect 10% shrinkage of population there, and by 2050, 20%. And this 20% means 500 empty apartments, and that's only in that small site. 60% of that site is green space. So again, if we take this number of apartments and we divide it with the amount of green space we have, we can see that each apartment could get 62.1 square meter of green space. It's also important to look at longevity of buildings in those type of areas. So normally those type of buildings which I was researching, their lifespan is around 120 years. So they will build in 1966. So it means they still have a quite decent, at least 50 years of lifespan. So it means it's worth doing something there and investing in those kind of areas. And it's the last one is very speculative, is that calculation of the price of the land there. It's a little bit outdated, the numbers might be, because it's a couple of years old numbers, but let's say 1 hectare is a bit less than 1 million euros for buying or doing something. Okay, so when we have this data, we have the site, we know the issue. How do we deal? How do we do anything in this type of environment where population is shrinking? There's no money, because when the population is shrinking, basically that's the main issue. There's no money. Government doesn't have money to fund anything because there's less taxes and so on, and it's a like closed circle. So we need to find money to start something. So if you remember the start, it's typical socialist neighborhood, big roads around, lots of green space. What's important to understand that there's a, like on the perimeter, there's a green space, and then there's green space inside of the courtyard. So there's kind of two type of spaces, which we're talking about. And what we could do firstly is take that space on the perimeter, that empty space, and make it as a new development area sites. We could sell it to developers, private developers, which would buy, rent, or whatever model which we choose the land. And by doing this, we could generate some kind of cash. And why they should do it? Because those socialist neighborhoods normally were built a little bit on the outskirts of the cities, but during the expansions of the cities, now they are in very good locations. Along the main roads, as it was planned and intended. So the real estate around, or not real estate, but the land around the perimeters of the big streets, it should be quite attractive for some kind of investments, commercial use. And by attracting that investment, we could imagine that buildings on the perimeter of those those blocks could, well, this is just one example, could have new neighbors, new structures. In this case, what I'm showing you is, well, a possibility of elderly center, which could be developed from together with one of the apartment blocks on the left, and it would face the street. And this new project could generate some income and for the area. And once we have it, we could do another thing. We could assign each apartment its own land, because when population is shrinking, again, there's a problem of who will take care of public spaces, parks, there's not enough funding, who will pay for the light and cleaning, trash, and all these things. So normally, one of the ways to deal with that is to give more ownership to the people, so that people would just take care of their own land. So if we would, in that particular site, if we would divide some kind of some spaces for, assign some spaces for public paths, promenades, public, maybe small pocket parks, from 60 square meter per apartment, we would be still left with 40 square meter, which is 8 by 5. It's a quite okay size as well, a small apartment in the city for free, given to each apartment. So in some cases, your apartment space, your ownership of land would be doubled property. And by doing this, once every apartment gets its own land, we could imagine seeing interesting things happening. Maybe somebody doesn't need that land, so they would sell it. So if they sell the land, it means they generate additional income. Plus, if you know that if you live here, you get a piece of land, then people will want to move to this area. So it means shrinking could be reversed in this particular location. And then we can talk about what's happening in those lands, because by making some policies, it's very simple in a way. Of course, it's not simple when it involves politics, but in the idea way, it's very simple. by changing the way what we allow people to do inside of their land, we can really change the character of the neighborhood. So, for example, in this case, if we imagine gardening, we have a gardening spaces inside of the private gardening spaces inside of the block. We have new development on the perimeter. We have some public accessibility left, public stadium, and so on. But we have this type of character. But if we look at the city scale, we can imagine that if we apply the same strategy to every neighborhood, every block, it will again be the same everywhere. So we don't have to do it. We can use the same method, just we can tweak the policy. So let's say the first one is one of the areas in the city we do, and we say you can do with your own land only private gardens. You can plant maybe small bushes and you can grow vegetables, that's it. But for another plot, you can do exactly the same strategy, but say you can grow animals. For example, if you want, you can grow cow or sheep, which normally you cannot do in the city. And then this becomes a special feature of that block. In a third one, we could imagine, well, maybe you can build something very small, but maybe you can build something and it will become the special feature of that place. Or maybe in a fourth location, we say, well, we don't need those schools and kindergartens, which are normally located around, because previous free has those facilities, and we don't need that many schools because there's less children and so on. So we close down and we make them some education centers, which are very popular in Japan, where children with their parents, they come and then they learn how vegetables grow or animals live and so on. So expanding on animal theme, we could have a mini zoo, for example, inside of apartment block and so on. What does it mean? It means that we encourage these stagnating areas to compete again and innovate. So one area might become more attractive and another one will fail. For example, mini zoo maybe will be failing. Nobody will want to live there because it's a stupid idea, maybe. And everybody will move into private garden block because everybody wants a private garden and maybe it's a good idea. And by just testing completely just with policy, we could really try to compete and condense people into some places. And if some places fail, well, maybe we just need to demolish those blocks completely. But overall, if we do nothing, then it means people will be really evenly spread out everywhere. And then you have to maintain half empty houses, which doesn't really make sense. This strategy offers, without almost any money, to start some changes. And I want to show you now second project, which we are still doing, and it's a real project. The first one was just the research, but second one is a real project, which takes some ideas from what I was just saying. Not everything, it's not a copy paste, and it's not that extreme because it's a practical project, and practice is a little bit different from theory, so there's some challenge there. But we're using some of the ideas. This year, our studio has won a competition in a small town, city in Lithuania, again, for housing blocks. And our tasks were to do public spaces. So basically what I was talking, almost the same thing in a previous project. And again, the first thing what we did, it's a free separate areas. One is quite big and two are smaller ones. And what we did, of course, we had to connect them because those areas are normally very fragmented and it's very hard to access, and everything is like really children playgrounds. They were not, I think, renovated since the construction of those housing blocks. So you can imagine how they look, or they don't look anymore at all because they just don't exist. So first thing, we created a backbone for everything. And once we created a backbone, we started to look what kind of qualities, special qualities we can give to each site. And as I mentioned, the project is under development. So I don't really want to show you too much because things might change and I might give false expectations. But here are some pictures and some things which I think are quite special what we're doing there. So in the biggest area, we'll introduce private gardening. It's not really introducing, it exists, some guerrilla gardening, but we will encourage it and we will update it with the facilities, and from something like guerrilla type illegal activity, we will try to make it really proper, recognized activity, which you feel that you can do it here legally. The other thing which we want to do, which is not very maybe logic sometimes, is fruit gardens, because apples they rot and then fruits they rot, and it's not the best, I guess, type of garden in the city. However, we feel that this will give a really special character to the neighborhood. And expanding on that, we want to create a community pavilion, which can also work as a vegetable or a garden fresh food market, which will be next to those gardens. So everything is kind of connected on one theme. And then, of course, you expand, and then you also add open fire barbecue spaces, because I mean, you have all the food facility and you generate all your food you can buy, you can sell, and you can grow, and why not to eat it there also? Which again, open fire barbecue is not, it's not the best idea maybe sometimes in the city, but if it's done properly, it's fine. So this is what we will introduce. Again, this is just a map, just clearly, a little bit more clearly to show you what's happening. On the right side, you can see there will be fruit gardens, barbecue, community pavilions, gardening, and then you see two vertical lines. So the one on the left is more active with the sports and play fields, playgrounds. The one on the right is more calm and passive with the gardens and fields and all these barbecue and community facilities. So there's two vertical backbones, and the one on the bottom running down by a small stream, small river. It's kind of tying everything together, and it's a sport leisure area for just nice walks and having views on the slope of the river. And I will, okay, now you can say, okay, Andrius, you've been talking a lot. You've been talking about urban design and urban planning mostly. Okay, this all is fine, but how do we approach this in architectural way? What can we do in architectural way a little bit differently, which could address those issues which I mentioned previously? So I want to show you this one small project which we did here in Lithuania. I think 2 years ago, a little bit more, maybe, we were approached by one of the creators of this gallery. And the issue here is that we really love the building as architects. However, nobody really in the city knows that it's a gallery or it's a museum. Everybody knows the bar, which is on the ground floor, and everybody goes there to drink, but nobody really knows what's upstairs. So that's the problem or the challenge with this, which we had to address. And we really liked the building. So we did what normally architects try to avoid to do, or you shouldn't really do it, or this is how we thought that that's a bad way of doing architecture. So we did imitation and copy of the existing. So if you see, well, it's not maybe super straightforward, but it's pretty straightforward, I think, imitation of existing building, because it's made from cubes and we just created another cube. And therefore, by doing this, yes, it's a pavilion. However, we tried to create something very different from like what Serpentine or usually what Pavilion is, because normally it has to be very original, very colorful, very visible, etc. We didn't want to do this here. We just copied the existing building and said, how, if that old gallery, which we like, would be built today, how it could look like, how it could be done differently. And this is what we ended up. This is just, in a way, a small hint showing what the gallery behind could be. So in a way, maybe it's a little bit different because the one is contemporary, one is from 70s, but in a way they are all the same because they all function, both the gallery and this pavilion function as a exhibition spaces. They are both like cube, they are both gray, they have walls, you can hang pictures, etc. So there's many different possibilities of hanging things inside. But in the end, it's just an extension of the existing gallery, and it's really, this project wasn't really about the project itself, it was more about the gallery. So what we wanted really to do with all this imitation is to show the people who think that maybe it's gray, it's boring, and the gallery looks pretty much like every other building in the city, or concrete for many people is concrete, no matter how it looks like, and it always looks the same. So we created something else, which if you like our pavilion, we think, then you should easily see yourself liking the building behind. So in a way, this was a project of a little bit changing the narrative around the gallery itself. And it's a temporary intervention. So once it will be demolished, we hope that this impression of, we will give maybe a hint to the people that you can look at the existing gallery now a little bit differently. We don't know if it will work, but 2 years ago, we've been awarded for this project. This project was awarded as one of 5 best projects built in Lithuania. So we are happy that it's getting recognized, that people see it, and maybe we will help some people to see the qualities of the existing building behind also. That's the street elevation, and you can see again, it's just a quite straightforward copy of shapes and sizes, proportions of the existing envelope of the building.
Hello, Polly! Polly! Polly Parrot, wake up! Polly!
So I don't know if anybody's still watching, if anybody has fallen asleep, but not to spend too much of your time, I will jump to summary now. So what I've been saying now, just a quick summary of everything. Population in many places is not growing or is in just decline. There will be less need for new structures because, well, less people means we don't need to build that much. And in some cases, we have already built everything we need to host the amount of people we need. So there's a good question, why do we need to build anything at all now? And then architects, of course, need to adjust to this new reality if they want to get a job. Simple as that. And policy is an extremely powerful tool which can help to change environment in very cheap way. And because policy can change environment, and changing environment is was always a work of architects, then it's a question if architects shouldn't be doing more policy bending or narrative changing projects, which would because usually we are working on just new structures and that's it. But from those few examples and from what I was talking, I hope you got some idea that maybe it's possible to work and do some or take some risky steps regarding the policies, regarding it's legal, illegal, can I do it or I cannot do it, in the hope that it could change some policies. And when you change the policy, as I mentioned before, it's very easy to change the environment, and it's very quick. Not very quick, but it's very affordable way. And we need affordable solutions, architectural affordable ways of dealing when the population globally will stagnate or start declining in some areas.
It's free real estate.
So thank you. Thank you for joining me. And now I'm getting some questions from you. I don't know from who. Okay, question time now. I see one question. Thank you for such a nice topic and lecture. Well, thank you. I wanted to know, is the housing market going to crash in 2021 because of the COVID pandemic effect, and how the situation can develop with a free market estate in the future? Yes, it's. I touched a little bit on economics, a little bit speculative economics in this lecture. I'm not economist, and it's not my expertise, so I should say I will not. I shouldn't maybe answer this because don't take my investment advice, but the thing, at least how I feel professionally, housing, at least so far, it hasn't been a big issue of COVID pandemic, because people still need to live, and it's a basic need. And it seems the projects, at least here in Lithuania, they are ongoing, maybe a little more carefully, but they're ongoing. More issue is with hotels, hotel project. Everything in that industry is a problem. And office spaces, I think many projects are on hold. Also, we experienced the consequence of this. Yeah, and how the situation can develop with a free market estate in the future. Well, it was a little bit provocation, this free houses and free market estates, or if I understand the question correctly, but I don't know. It's a little bit more economical question. Maybe I shouldn't be answering these kind of very tricky economic questions, which I don't know if economists even can answer very well. Let's see if we have somebody else. Okay, if we don't have any more presentations, so thank you for no more questions. So thank you for joining me. And yeah, if you are interested, check out the links and text me. Thanks, bye.